Working hard pays the bills, but working smart builds the future. Most people spend their whole lives earning a living and never get around to designing a life. The truth is, wages can keep you comfortable, but only assets can set you free. If you don't learn to make money while you sleep, you'll spend your life awake, trading hours for survival. Financial freedom isn't an accident, it's a formula. And tonight I want to show you how to stop relying only on effort and start building the kind of assets that will secure your freedom for years to come. I remember when I was young, just starting out in the workforce, I thought that the goal was simply to earn more money. I thought if I could just get a bigger paycheck, life would be better. And for a while, it was. A paycheck can pay the rent. It can buy food. It can put gas in your car. But here's the truth I discovered. Wages make a living, but they don't make a life. A paycheck keeps you going, but it doesn't set you free. If you spend your whole life relying only on wages, you will always be at the mercy of someone else's schedule, someone else's decisions, someone else's economy. The breakthrough came when I learned the difference between making a living and making a life. Making a living is about covering your needs, but making a life is about creating freedom. And freedom doesn't come from wages, it comes from assets. Assets work for you while you sleep, they multiply when you're not looking, and they can outlive you to serve your family long after you're gone. That's the great secret. Wages buy groceries, but assets buy freedom. So what's the strategy? It's simple, but it requires discipline. You take the money you earn from your job, and instead of spending it all on things that disappear, on dinners, on gadgets, on the newest fashion, you channel part of it into things that last. I call your paycheck seed money. If you consume all the seed, you'll never have a harvest. But if you take a portion of it, 10, 15, maybe 20%, and you plant it into assets, you begin building a harvest that keeps growing. It could be stocks, real estate, or a small business. It doesn't matter where you begin, only that you begin. When I first heard this idea, I didn't have much, but I decided that even if I could only set aside a small amount, I would do it. I bought my first small investment when it barely seemed like anything. Over time, that little seed grew, and then another seed, and then another. And before I knew it, my life was no longer dependent only on what I could earn in a day. It was supported by what I had built over years. And let me tell you, there's nothing like the feeling of knowing that your money is working harder than you are. When you get to that place, you stop waking up worried about how you'll pay the bills, and you start waking up asking how you can use your freedom to build, to give, and to create even more. That's when you move from surviving to truly living. So the practical step is straightforward. Take 10 to 20% of your wages, no matter how small your paycheck is, and put it into an asset. Don't wait until you have more money, because if you can't manage a little, you won't manage a lot. Start today. Start small, but start, because wages will make your living, but only assets will make your life. I used to think that if I worked longer hours, stayed busy, and kept myself moving, then surely success and wealth would follow. But after a while, I realized something sobering. Activity doesn't always equal productivity. You can run fast on a treadmill, sweat, and burn energy, but you don't actually go anywhere. That's how a lot of people live their financial lives. They mistake being busy for being effective. They fill their days with tasks that look important but don't create any leverage, any scale, or any lasting value. And at the end of the year, they're just as stuck as they were 12 months before. So the question is not, am I working hard enough? The real question is, am I working on the right things? Because wealth is not a reward for effort, it's a reward for results. Some people work all day, but their work produces only enough to keep them going another day. Others work the same amount of hours, but because they've chosen tasks with leverage, they set up systems, assets, or skills that keep paying them long after the work is done. That's the difference between activity and productivity. When I was young, I found myself busy but broke. I was constantly moving, chasing the next thing, but I wasn't planting seeds that would grow. Then a mentor taught me a simple but powerful lesson. Don't just get through the day, get from the day. It changed how I approached everything. Instead of just asking, how much can I do today? I started asking, what can I build today that will last beyond today? That's when I learned to separate motion from progress. The strategy is to shift your focus away from tasks that only keep you busy and toward those that build leverage and value. For example, answering emails, shuffling papers, or running errands might feel necessary, but they don't usually create wealth. But building an asset, developing a skill, creating a product, or nurturing a valuable relationship, those are productive activities. Those are the ones that create a future payoff. And here's a practical way to make it work. Every evening before you go to bed, write down the one task that if you complete it tomorrow will truly move you forward financially. Not 10 tasks, not 20, just one. And then when you wake up, do that task first before you get distracted by everything else. If you do that every day, in 1 year, you'll have accomplished 365 meaningful steps toward wealth. That's the compound effect of productivity. I learned long ago that busyness can be the enemy of progress if you don't channel it into the right areas. Don't confuse being active with being productive. If you want wealth, you don't need to do more. You need to do what matters. And when you focus your energy there, you'll be amazed at how much ground you cover and how fast you move toward freedom. One of the greatest shifts you can ever make in your thinking is to stop living for the paycheck and start building for the generations. Too many people spend their lives caught in the rhythm of work, earn, spend, repeat. They live month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and while it may cover the immediate needs, it rarely creates stability or security beyond today. Wealth, on the other hand, is not about satisfying the moment, it's about laying foundations that last. The wealthy don't just think in days or months, they think in decades, sometimes even in centuries. They plant trees whose shade they may never sit under, but their children and their children's children will. When I was younger, I thought success was measured by what I could buy for myself. But as I grew older, I realized true wealth is not just what you accumulate, it's what you leave behind. If all you do is earn and consume, then when your time here ends, so does your wealth. But if you use your earnings to build assets that outlive you, your influence and provision extend far beyond your lifetime. That's what gives meaning to financial success. The strategy is clear. Build assets that can provide stability and opportunity, not only for you, but also for those who come after you. Real estate, businesses, investments, intellectual property, all of these can become vehicles that live on after you're gone. But it's not just the material assets that matter, it's also the principles, the habits, the mindset. Because wealth that's handed down without wisdom will eventually disappear. If you want your children to benefit from your efforts, teach them the rules that created your success. That way, they don't just inherit money, they inherit a philosophy. I'll give you a practical example. Let's say you build up a small rental property business. It brings in income, not only to support you now, but later it can support your family after you. Imagine your children watching you buy that first property, manage it, and slowly grow it. They don't just see money, they see discipline, patience, and strategy. They'll learn that wealth is built, not stumbled upon. And that lesson is worth more than the property itself. Here's a simple step to put this into practice. Write down 3 principles of wealth you want to pass to your family. Maybe it's discipline with money. Maybe it's the habit of saving before spending. Maybe it's the courage to take risks when the time is right. Whatever they are, put them on paper. Then start modeling those principles so your family sees them lived out, not just spoken. Children may ignore advice, but they rarely ignore example. Generational thinking forces you to slow down, to invest wisely, and to create with a purpose beyond yourself. The poor may think paycheck to paycheck, but the wealthy build for their children's children. That's the difference. And when you embrace it, your life stops being just about survival and starts becoming a story of legacy. Money is a fascinating thing. It has the power to serve us, to create opportunities, to open doors, to buy time, and even to bless the lives of others. But it also has the potential to enslave us if we're not careful. For many people, money becomes the master. They chase it, worry about it, and make every decision based on it. That's not freedom, that's bondage. The key is to reverse the relationship. Money should never be your master. It should be your servant. It should work for you, not the other way around. I learned this lesson the hard way in my early years. Back then, whenever money showed up in my life, it quickly found its way out again. There was no plan, no purpose, no assignment. It was as if the money was in control and I was simply following along. But then I realized that money is neutral. It doesn't care who holds it. It will serve the discipline just as easily as it will punish the careless. The deciding factor is always the person in charge. That's why the strategy is simple but powerful. Give every dollar an assignment. If you don't, money will drift. Assign some dollars to savings, some to investments, some to growth, and some to giving. When you do this, you take the role of master. You tell money where to go. Instead of waking up one day and wondering where it all went, the wealthy understand this truth deeply. They don't just earn money, they direct it, they multiply it, and they use it as a tool. Think of it like employees in a company. If you don't give employees clear instructions, they waste time, get distracted, and the company suffers. But if you assign them tasks, monitor progress, and hold them accountable, the company thrives. Money is no different. Each dollar you earn should be an employee with a clear job description. Some will be assigned to go out and work for you in investments. Some will be told to protect you in savings. Some will be tasked with making life better for others through generosity. And yes, some can even be allowed to serve your enjoyment, but only after the essentials have been covered. Here's a practical step to put this into motion. For the next 30 days, track every single expense. Don't let a single dollar slip by unnoticed. At the end of the month, take a hard look at where your money has gone. You'll likely find at least one area where money has been sneaking away to things that don't really matter. Unnecessary habits, mindless spending, or impulse buys. Then, reallocate just one of those costs into something that builds an asset. It might be a small stock purchase, a contribution to your investment account, or even a book or course that builds your skills. If you do this consistently, you'll discover the joy of being in control. Money will stop running your life and start serving your life. And that's the real power. Not being rich for the sake of money, but being free because you've learned to make money your servant. It's easy to look at someone with great wealth and think they must have made one giant move, one lucky break, or one extraordinary leap that changed everything. But that's rarely the truth. The reality is that wealth is almost always the result of small, consistent habits practiced over long periods of time. Fortune doesn't show up overnight. It sneaks in quietly. one discipline at a time, one decision at a time, one choice at a time. That's the philosophy I had to learn for myself. Wealth is not built in leaps, but in layers. When I was younger, I wanted it fast. I thought maybe if I worked a little harder or found a shortcut, the results would just pour in. But shortcuts rarely last, and hard work without smart habits can leave you exhausted and empty-handed. What finally shifted my life was the realization that small, simple disciplines practiced daily will take you further than bursts of effort ever could. Think about it. Saving a little every day, studying a page every night, writing down one idea each morning. These things seem insignificant in the moment, but compounded over months and years, they transform everything. That's why the strategy is so critical. Build routines that align with financial growth. Don't underestimate the little things. If you journal your ideas daily, you may capture the seed of a business that changes your future. If you save $5 a day, you might not notice the impact this month, but in a decade, the compounded effect is staggering. If you commit to reading 10 pages a night from a book on finance or personal development, in just 1 year, you'll have absorbed the wisdom of a dozen great minds. Those habits are like bricks. You lay one brick today, another tomorrow, and before long, you've built the foundation of wealth. A practical step you can take right now is to choose one daily habit that aligns with your financial future. Just one. Don't try to overhaul everything at once. It could be setting aside $5 in a separate account every day. It could be writing down 3 ideas for generating income every morning. It could be dedicating 15 minutes before bed to studying investments or business principles. Whatever it is, make it simple, make it repeatable, and make it non-negotiable. And here's the beauty. Small habits carry very little resistance. You don't need to be wealthy to start saving $5. You don't need to be a genius to write down an idea. You don't need endless free time to read 10 pages. But those small habits compound, and compounding is one of the most powerful forces in wealth creation. Over time, they build momentum, and momentum builds fortunes. So don't wait for the giant leap. Don't look for the one-time windfall. Start with the little disciplines today, because those are the seeds of tomorrow's abundance. Small habits, repeated daily, are what create big fortunes. One of the hardest lessons to learn, especially when you're young and eager, is that wealth is not an event, it's a process. Quick money may feel exciting, but it has a way of slipping through your fingers just as fast as it arrives. Real wealth is patient wealth, the kind that's built brick by brick, year after year, until one day you look around and realize the walls of security, freedom, and opportunity have been quietly rising around you. That's the philosophy I came to understand. Patience multiplies wealth. The impatient chase shortcuts, but the patient embrace the slow, steady compounding effect that never fails over time. I used to want everything quickly. When I first started to make a little extra money, my instinct was to spend it or to look for a way to double it overnight. And I learned quickly that impatience has a price. It robs you of the power of compounding. The person who starts small and sticks with it often surpasses the one who chases quick wins but burns out. Imagine planting a tree and then pulling it up every week to see if it's growing. You'd kill it. But if you water it daily and give it time, eventually that tree provides shade, fruit, and wood that can last generations. Wealth is no different. That's why the strategy must be clear. Trust the compound effect of consistent saving, investing, and reinvesting. Compounding is like magic, but it only works with patience. $1 becomes $2, $2 become $4, $4 become $8, but only if you resist the urge to interrupt the process. I often say, consistency beats intensity. a little saved every month, a little invested regularly, grows into something extraordinary when given enough time, and reinvesting, rolling your gains back into the system instead of pulling them out, creates exponential results. The practical step is simple, though not always easy. Open a long-term account if you haven't already. Make it automatic. Set it up so that a portion of your income, even if it's small, is contributed every month without you having to think about it. That way, you're building wealth on autopilot. And here's the key. Resist the temptation of shortcuts. There will always be someone promising quick returns, fast money, overnight riches. Most of the time, those shortcuts are traps. Remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Real wealth is built on patience, not speed. So let patience be your ally. Don't despise small beginnings. Don't underestimate steady growth. Over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, patience multiplies your efforts into a fortune. Just as the seasons take time to turn, wealth takes time to mature. The impatient plant seeds and demand fruit tomorrow. The wise plant and let nature do its work. Patience multiplies wealth if you'll let time and consistency do their part. One of the greatest misunderstandings about wealth is the idea that you get paid according to your needs. People often say, "I need more money," as though the marketplace is moved by sympathy. But here's the truth. The marketplace doesn't pay for your needs. It pays for the value you bring. Wealth doesn't follow wishes. It follows value. You can wish all day for a bigger bank account, but unless you increase the value you bring to others, those wishes will remain unfulfilled. That was a lesson I had to learn myself. The hard truth that my income was directly connected to the value I created, not the hours I worked or the desires I carried. Think about it. Two people can work equally hard, put in the same hours, and yet one earns 10 times more than the other. Why? Because one person is solving bigger problems for more people. The world rewards value. A doctor who saves lives, a leader who guides a company, an inventor who creates a product millions use, all of them are compensated because they've chosen to increase their value. Hard work is admirable, but without value, it often leads only to exhaustion. The goal is to work on yourself so that what you bring to the marketplace is rare, useful, and needed. That's why the strategy is simple but powerful. Focus on solving bigger problems for more people. If you can only solve small problems, your income will remain small. But if you develop the skill, creativity, and persistence to address larger challenges, you'll open the door to larger opportunities. I remember when I shifted my own focus from just working hard to working smart, asking myself, how can I bring more value? That change in perspective completely altered the direction of my life. The practical step to begin this journey is to sit down and write out 3 skills, ideas, or insights you already possess that could solve problems in your industry or community. Maybe you're good at communication. Maybe you understand systems. Maybe you're creative in ways others aren't. Identify those assets and then choose one to pursue with consistency. Don't try to do everything at once. Just pick one area where you can expand your value and commit to it daily. Over time, that focus creates momentum, and momentum creates results. Wealth doesn't show up because you wish for it, or because you need it, or because life seems unfair. Wealth shows up in proportion to the value you provide. That's the equation the marketplace always honors. So instead of asking for more money, start asking how you can become more valuable. The moment you commit to that path, you stop relying on wishes and start building wealth that lasts. Wealth follows value always. One of the most dangerous traps in our society is lifestyle debt. It's easy to fall into because it hides itself as progress. You see the commercials, you hear the slogans, you deserve it, buy now, pay later, upgrade today, and before long, You're signing on for a new car loan, swiping the credit card for the latest gadget, or financing vacations that disappear as quickly as they arrive. But here's the reality. Debt for consumption keeps you poor. It doesn't just drain your money. It steals your freedom. You end up working harder, not to get ahead, but simply to keep up with payments on things that are losing value every single day. I remember watching people who looked wealthy on the outside. They drove shiny cars, wore expensive clothes, lived in big houses, but behind the curtain, it was all financed. Every dollar they earned was already spoken for before it hit their pockets. That's not wealth, that's slavery dressed up as success. The poor mindset is to use debt to consume. The wealthy mindset is to use debt, if at all, only to acquire assets that appreciate and generate income. There's a vast difference between buying a new car on credit that drops in value the second you drive it off the lot and using a loan to purchase a property that pays you rent every month. One takes money from your pocket. The other puts money into it. The strategy is clear. Eliminate the liabilities that drain your wealth and use leverage only when it builds something that grows. If you're going to carry the burden of debt, at least let it work in your favor. Too many people carry debt like a ball and chain, wondering why they can't get ahead. But imagine if that same energy, that same monthly payment, was directed toward an asset that produced income year after year. It changes the entire trajectory of your life. So here's the practical step I'd urge you to take. Cancel one consumer debt payment this year. Just one. Maybe it's paying off that credit card that keeps you chained with interest. Maybe it's deciding not to upgrade the car and instead driving what you have a little longer. Maybe it's saying no to financing the next gadget you don't really need. Free yourself from at least one of those chains and redirect that same money into an asset, a stock that pays dividends, a savings account that grows, or the seed of a business you've been dreaming about. Remember, debt isn't evil when it's used wisely, but when it's used to finance a lifestyle you can't truly afford, it robs you twice. Once with the interest, and again with the lost opportunity to invest. Don't let lifestyle debt fool you into looking rich while staying poor. Redirect that money and let it start working for you instead of against you. That's how you begin breaking free from the trap. It's been said that money makes money, and that's true, but let me tell you something even more powerful. Knowledge compounds faster than capital. Money may earn you interest, but wisdom multiplies your opportunities. Too many people chase after the promise of quick returns without first building the understanding to protect and grow what they earn. That's why some win the lottery and are broke within a few years, while others start with very little and build fortunes that last generations. The difference isn't luck, it's literacy. When I was young, I thought money alone was the answer. If I could just make more, I thought everything else would fall into place. But I learned the hard way that without knowledge, money slips right through your fingers. On the other hand, when you gain understanding about how money works, how investments grow, how to manage risk, you can start small and still end up with extraordinary wealth over time. One of the greatest gifts of knowledge is that it creates leverage. You may not have $1 million yet, but if you know what to do with 10, you're already on the path. The strategy, then, is not to chase investments blindly or follow every trend that comes along, but to first invest in yourself. Build financial literacy. Understand the difference between assets and liabilities, between cash flow and consumption, between speculation and sound investing. Learn the skills that increase your earning power: sales, communication, leadership, investing, problem solving. Once those skills are in place, money becomes a servant, not a master. You won't just be reacting to opportunities. You'll know how to create them. I've met people who earned incredible incomes, but lost it all because they didn't understand taxes, inflation, or the basics of compounding. And I've met others who started with almost nothing, but they studied diligently, asked questions, and sought mentors. Over time, their knowledge opened doors to opportunities that others couldn't even see. Wisdom doesn't just protect your wealth, it multiplies it. It allows you to spot value, to negotiate effectively, to position yourself where growth is inevitable. So here's the practical step. Dedicate just 1 hour a week, only one, to studying financial education, investments, and wealth strategies. Read a book on money, listen to an audio program, or attend a seminar. It doesn't have to be complicated. Consistency is what matters. If you compound that 1 hour a week over a year, that's more than 50 hours of new insights, new ideas, and new tools that could change the entire direction of your financial life. Money will grow when you put it to work, but knowledge will grow faster, and it will guide your money to the right places. Don't just seek capital. Seek wisdom first, because when you have knowledge, opportunities are no longer accidents. They become the natural byproduct of the way you think and the way you act. Money must be given purpose. Without direction, it has a way of slipping through your fingers and finding its way into someone else's pocket. Left unattended, money gets wasted on things that bring little lasting value. Impulse buys, fleeting pleasures, unnecessary expenses. But money with a mission becomes a powerful tool for creating freedom, security, and even legacy. It's not the amount that matters as much as the intention behind it. A small sum used wisely can accomplish more than a large fortune squandered carelessly. When I was young and broke, I discovered something. I didn't just have a money problem, I had a direction problem. I thought earning more would fix everything, but the truth was, without a plan, I was destined to repeat the same cycle. It wasn't until I started giving every dollar a job, deciding in advance whether it was for saving, investing, giving, or spending, that things began to shift. I learned that money is a terrible master, but an excellent servant. And the way you turn it into a servant is by giving it purpose. The strategy is to align wealth with your values. Ask yourself, what do I want my money to do for me? Maybe it's security, having enough tucked away so that emergencies don't shake you. Maybe it's growth, directing a portion into investments that'll multiply over time. Maybe it's contribution, setting aside a piece to help causes that matter or people you love. Whatever it is, when your money reflects your values, it becomes more than numbers on a bank statement. It becomes a tool for creating the life you've designed. I once met a man who earned a small salary but lived with extraordinary peace of mind. Why? Because he gave every dollar a purpose. A portion went into savings, a portion into investments, a portion into giving, and only what was left was used for his living. He wasn't rich by the world's standards, but he was free from anxiety, free from debt, free from confusion about where his money went. Compare that to another man I knew who made 3 times as much but spent carelessly with no plan. One lived in control, the other in chaos. That's the difference purpose makes. So here's the practical step. This month, sit down and write a simple money plan. Nothing complicated, just a clear assignment for every dollar that comes in. Decide what percentage goes to savings, what goes to investments, what goes to giving, and what goes to living. Review it every 30 days. You'll be amazed at how much clarity, confidence, and freedom this simple habit brings. Money doesn't drift into purpose on its own. It must be directed. When you give it an assignment, you turn dollars into building blocks of freedom, stability, and fulfillment. Without purpose, money disappears. With purpose, money multiplies. Don't rent your life away. Too many people live their whole lives paying for things they'll never own, exchanging time for wages they can't keep, and renting comfort that disappears the moment they stop paying. Rent, whether it's rent on a house, rent on your lifestyle, or rent on your time, keeps you bound in a cycle of dependence. You work, you pay, and you repeat. Ownership, on the other hand, changes everything. Ownership creates stability, security, and freedom. It transforms your effort into something lasting. I remember when I first realized this lesson. I was renting not just a place to live, but renting my entire life. My hours, my energy, my potential. I was always paying but never keeping. Then I met someone who owned assets, and I saw the difference. They were working too, but they weren't working just to stay afloat. Their ownership was paying them back, even while they slept. It wasn't the size of their income that impressed me, it was the stability of their wealth. Ownership gave them leverage, and leverage gave them freedom. The philosophy is simple. Renting keeps you on the treadmill. Ownership moves you toward freedom. That doesn't mean you can never rent a house or lease a car, but it means you must always be thinking about where you can shift from being a consumer to being an owner. Own property, own a piece of a business, own your intellectual output, own your financial future. Ownership means you're not at the mercy of someone else's terms. It means your time, energy, and money are working for you rather than vanishing into someone else's pocket. The strategy is to start shifting your mindset from perpetual renter to deliberate owner. This doesn't happen overnight, and you don't need to buy an empire in one move. Ownership starts small. Maybe you buy one share of stock, and that becomes your first piece of ownership. Maybe you create one digital product, something that you build once but can sell over and over. Maybe you put together the down payment on a small property. Even if it's modest, what matters is that you begin the shift. Every small step into ownership is a step away from dependence. I knew a young couple once who decided to stop renting their future away. They couldn't buy a house yet, but they could create something of their own. They built a small side business selling digital content. It didn't make them millionaires overnight, but it gave them ownership. And ownership gave them confidence because they weren't just paying, they were building. So here's the practical step. Make one move this year toward ownership. Buy a property if you can, but if not, own a share of a company, start a business, or create something digital that has your name on it. Ownership doesn't have to be big. It just has to begin. Don't rent your life away when you have the opportunity to own a piece of your future. Ownership is where freedom begins. Contribution sustains wealth. If you build wealth only for yourself, you'll eventually find it feels hollow, and often it won't last. Selfish wealth has a way of slipping away, but wealth tied to purpose, to contribution, multiplies and endures. Money without meaning can easily become wasted, spent on fleeting pleasures that leave you empty. But when wealth is used to serve, to uplift, to build something greater than yourself, it becomes anchored in significance, and that's what gives it staying power. I remember a time early in my journey when I thought wealth was about accumulation. I believed the more I gathered for myself, the more successful I'd feel. But after a while, I discovered that accumulation without contribution felt shallow. I had more than I used to, but the joy wasn't any greater. It was only when I began using what I had to help others, mentoring young entrepreneurs, supporting causes that mattered, that I felt wealth gain its true meaning. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about leaving a mark that could outlive me. The philosophy is simple. Wealth is sustained by giving. It's like a river. If it flows only in, it stagnates. But when it flows out, it refreshes and grows. The wealthy understand this. True wealth isn't just measured in what you keep, but in what you share. The very act of contribution sharpens your vision, attracts new opportunities, and builds a reputation that opens more doors than money ever could on its own. The strategy is to deliberately build assets, not just for your personal comfort, but for your family, your community, and the causes that stir your heart. This doesn't mean you neglect yourself. It means you expand your vision. If you're building a business, think about how it creates opportunities for others. If you're investing, think about how the returns can strengthen your family's future. If you're learning, think about how that knowledge can be passed down to others. When you tie wealth to contribution, it naturally lasts longer because it serves a purpose beyond one lifetime. I once knew a man who built his company not just to make money, but to provide jobs in his community. His wealth didn't just sustain him, it sustained dozens of families. That's contribution in action. And because of it, his wealth was never just about numbers in a bank. It was about lives changed, futures built, and opportunities created. That kind of wealth rarely disappears because it becomes bigger than one person. So here's the practical step. Choose one way this year to use your wealth to benefit others. It could be mentorship, sharing your experience with someone just starting out. It could be donations, supporting a cause that aligns with your values. Or it could be building opportunities, creating jobs, funding education, or helping someone else start their journey. Remember, selfish wealth dries up, but wealth with contribution multiplies and lasts. The real measure of wealth isn't just in what you achieve, but in what you give back. Ladies and gentlemen, as we draw this message to a close, I want to leave you with something that stays long after the applause fades, something that keeps echoing in your mind when the day-to-day noise of life returns. The journey to financial freedom is not only about building wealth, but about building the kind of person who deserves that wealth. Money alone will never solve life's biggest challenges. It will only amplify the person you've become in the process of earning it. That is why the central question you must ask yourself every day is not, what am I getting, but what am I becoming? Because what you become is far more valuable than what you get. I have often said, wages make you a living, but profits, assets, and contribution make you a fortune. And I don't mean fortune only in financial terms. I mean a fortune of influence, a fortune of options, a fortune of freedom to live life on your terms and bless others along the way. But none of this comes by chance. It comes by design. Success, after all, is something you attract by the person you become. If you want better things, you must become better. If you want to move from just working for money to having money work for you, then you must adopt the disciplines, the strategies, and the philosophies we've been talking about. The call to action is simple but urgent. Start today. Don't wait for the perfect time. There isn't one. Don't wait for the big opportunity. Small opportunities, seized consistently, create the big breaks. Don't wait for someone else to hand you the map. You already hold the pen that writes your story. Maybe your first step is to open that investment account and put in a small amount every month. Maybe it's to pick up that book on financial literacy and dedicate 30 minutes a day to reading. Maybe it's to eliminate one unnecessary expense and redirect that money toward building an asset. Or maybe it's to reach out to a mentor or become one yourself. Whatever it is, start now. Because wealth isn't built in leaps. It's built in steps, repeated faithfully over time. And let me remind you, the goal isn't just to build a bank account. The goal is to build a life of meaning, a life of freedom, a life where you call the shots. Money is a tool, and like any tool, its usefulness depends on whose hands it's in. Place it in the hands of someone careless, and it will slip away. Place it in the hands of someone disciplined, someone who thinks generationally, someone who understands contribution, and it will multiply and sustain. So as you walk out of here, ask yourself, what's the one action I can take tonight, tomorrow morning, this week, that shifts me from wishing to working, from renting my life away to owning my future, from chasing income to building assets. And then take that step, because your future is not something to wait for. It is something to create. The time is now. The pen is in your hand. The question is, will you write the story of security, freedom, and contribution, or let life write it for you? The choice is yours, and the reward is waiting.